It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the July 18, 2016 Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. We'll do roll call. Let me start with Commissioner Clare here. Let the record show that he signed the appropriate paperwork and he has taken the oath. We go down to Commissioner Littlefield. He's not present. Commissioner White, not present. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner George.
Here.
And Commissioner Yonkel.
Here.
Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the May 16, 2016 meeting, please?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner George. Any discussion? And we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 16, 2016 meeting from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Ms. Yonkel, do you want to vote? You can still vote. Okay. Thank you. Item is approved. We have a report on licensed taxi and record services. Come on up, please.
Afternoon, Commissioners. Been a while. This is the quarterly report. This is going to include the annual inspections we had for this year. So on taxis, on driver's permits, we had 49 new, 55 renewed, 2 exempt, 2 replacement. Vehicle inspections was 272 passed, 13 failed, 1 complaint, 2 field inspections. Limousines, 15 new, 10 new, 63 vehicles passed. Carriages, we had 2 new, 5 renewed, 20 vehicles passed, 2 complaints on carriages and 2 field inspections on the carriages. Pedicabs, we had 8 new, 3 renewed, 28 passed. And then shuttles, 34 new, 19 renewed, and 63 of those vehicles passed, 3 failed. Just want to give you an update. Before the annual inspection, I was regulating 666 vehicles and around 460 drivers by myself. Now we're getting up to just guesstimating with the added about a little over 700 and almost 500 drivers. So we're growing quite well. So the annual inspections went quite well this year. Actually had a lot of improvements. I actually did it for a whole month. So next year we're going to make some more improvements, hopefully make it easier, more streamlined, to try to get all the owners in there, get all their vehicles permitted and done one time. So we're slowly making progress. Have any questions?
Yes, we do have one point.
Need to get with you. Had a gentleman call me. He was involved in a accident. He was rear-ended by a cab. Whenever he got the insurance information, called to report a claim, the insurance had been canceled.
Do you know what company that was?
Oklahoma City Green cab.
OKC Green. Okay. If you can send me an email, and I'll give you more.
Okay, there are a couple of things along that issue. When you do your inspections, is it possible to verify the insurance? I know it would be a kind of a hassle, but
They're supposed to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Either we need some form of verification at your point of inspection, or we need to start requiring that all certificate of insurance list the City of Oklahoma City as a certificate holder. That way, if a policy does go out, we're notified. I think currently there is no notification system in place. So we need to take steps to protect the safety of our community and know whenever a policy goes out, because we need to pull them off the street.
Correct. I did require this year and last year too that before they get inspected, I needed a copy of their business license, a new one, and their certificate of insurance to make sure it was up to. I did require that this year.
Okay, now on that certificate, it will list the company and their contact number. Are we verifying that? Because earlier this year, didn't we have a company provide us with just a fraudulent document?
That was OKC Green. That was last year, yes.
Okay.
So no, I did not call on those companies before that. I looked at their policy and it looked current it's probably another practice that I'll have to put in place next year to double check before we go into the annual inspections. The airport checks every 6 months, and they're the ones I usually end up getting the word that the companies went, their insurance is not valid. As for individual insurance, when I do the vehicle inspections, they bring me a placard, the insurance card with each vehicle. I do check that. So I will probably put that in place next year for the next annual inspections to make sure they're in compliance. So there's 2 that I know of, and that's the one that I know of that's having insurance problems.
But is that something that we can maybe do, changing the rules or whatever, but put in us as a second person on the insurance or something?
Well, it's typically standard procedure to do that. If you look, we've got one vehicle for hire company application on today's agenda, and if you look at the certificate holder information on their liability insurance, you'll notice that the city of Oklahoma City is listed. So we should be getting those.
It was my understanding that it's currently not a requirement, but I would like to see that made a requirement, because we have had some that are just a blank certificate as far as the certificate holder.
Okay, we'll have to pull the full ordinance for you just to verify that. But yeah, if it's not there, we can I suppose bring it forward.
I also know that the 8th floor for licensing, they have to, when they resubmit their packet for renewing their business license, they have to have that updated certificate of insurance. Now, if they're checking on it, I don't know. But I failed to get to that part of it, even though we had that problem last year with that OKC Marine. I'll make that a practice from now on to double check on that. Anything else, Commissioners?
Anybody else? All right, thank you very much. Okay, we go on now to item 4, the consent docket. Anybody here to speak against an item on the consent docket? All right, can we have a motion concerning the consent docket, please?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve the consent docket from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have any talk about the consent docket? Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent docket, item 4, from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Votes, please. All right, item is approved. We go on now to item 5, 5A, MedRide, Inc., to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from MedRide, Inc. to operate 50 non-emergency medical transport vehicles in van service. You have somebody here to speak on that? Sir, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm David Batson, president and owner of MedRide Corporation, and we're here to increase our fleet size, and plus I'm the owner now, so we're updating our application. And if you have any questions, I'm here. We do have our certificate listing the city of Oklahoma City, like I do with my other companies that we have here, and that's too bad somebody's doing that to us, but I'm here if you need me.
All right, thank you very much. We have staff input, please.
All right, as the applicant noted, they're submitting an application to expand their fleet, but this is also being submitted to the Commission for consideration as a new company, since to the best of our ability, it appears that the original owners no longer own this particular company. So the remainder of our staff comments are before you. The applicant has met all licensing application requirements as best as we're able to determine. So at this point in time, since there's no provision in Chapter 56 that prohibits the reuse of the name and/or color scheme of a non-emergency medical transport company that has been licensed in the past but is not currently licensed due to ownership change, as staff is recommending approval of the application as presented.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion concerning item 5A.
I move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner George. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion? Okay. We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We go on now to item 5B, Jonathan Hustle, P.E., President, Project Manager, Path Engineering, Design, and Urbanism, PLLC, to consider a request to, one, establish 60-degree angle parking within the proposed on-street setback parking area on the west side of Northwestern Avenue between Northwest 48th Street and Northwest 49th Street, and two, establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the west side of Northwestern Avenue from approximately 115 feet south to 145 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 49th Street. Hi there.
Hello, sir.
Name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
I just wanted to say, my name is Jonathan Heisel, 215 South Walker, and I appreciate your consideration of this item. I've worked with Stewart and the Public Works Director on this item, and we've gotten it massaged, and everybody seems to be happy, and I appreciate your consideration of this item.
Thank you very much. Can we have staff input?
Okay, just as a bit of background on this particular request, it's replacing a similar one that was struck at the May 16th agenda. As you know, Jonathan Heisel has submitted a request for 60-degree angle parking in a reserved space for the physically disabled on the west side of Western between 48th and 49th Streets. You have the remainder of staff comments before you. One item of note is we did do a follow-up speed study on the block of Western to the south where we had a speed limit reduction at the February meeting. You've got the results of the speed limit study before you. It appears in the middle of page 2. That's just basically additional information. And I know that at the last, following the last meeting, Commissioner Littlefield had requested that we gather some speed information and request some enforcement activity from the police department in that area. And I can make a quick reporting on what was done there. The police department reported that in the time period from January through July of this year, there were 43 traffic stops in the area, 43 stops, 48 citations issued, 3 warnings, and apparently one person was taken for driving under the influence. You've got the remainder of staff comments before you, so in this particular case, action on the item is going to be at the discretion of the Commission. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on this application.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
Now, I have a question about the maneuver distance on this item. What was recommended and
We need a motion first, sir.
I'll make a motion to disapprove this item.
Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5B from Commissioner Miller. We have a second.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Hale. Okay. Yes, sir.
Now, my question was, from reading this over, it seemed like that the people backing out of this parking place is going to encroach past the center line of opposing traffic. Now, is there any way we can get around that? Because I have a problem with that.
Yes, sir. We've worked with the Public Works Director and Mr. Chai, and we've set that offset to where the distances are fine for that center line striping, and they won't back out into those. I've looked at turning templates as well in a CAD program, and those distances more than meet the necessary requirements for backing up.
What is that distance? And what does our city recommend?
The distance is, it's 20, measured perpendicularly, it's the 20.2, plus an additional 3 feet gives all vehicles the opportunity to back up. So that's, 23 and change.
I wasn't sure the drawing showed that much distance, does it?
Okay. On page 4 of this particular report, we have done in the past, and this is recycled from other studies, where we've evaluated like 60-degree angle parking. We tested at the time 4 different vehicle types. They range in size from like a compact sedan to a Ford F-250 pickup truck. The depth that Mr. Heisel was talking about was for the parking space, the physical parking space itself. Because one of the things that we look at is making sure that at least the space is deep enough such that when you park a vehicle in there, you don't encroach into the lane right behind you. So that distance plus the buffer the 20.2 feet plus a 3 feet of buffer behind it will make sure that your vehicle, that even the largest vehicles will not hang out into Western Avenue itself. Our table, it's got, what do we have, 5 columns on it? The fourth column, or the second one from the right edge, shows the minimum backing distance beyond the end of a stall. And that is a measurement. If you were backing out in between two parked vehicles, it is a distance based on our study of how far back where you have to go before you're at the point where your vehicle has got enough maneuvering room to turn and then, cut your wheels and enter traffic. So this distance, like in the case of like the Toyota Corolla, which is the first one listed, the 12 feet 1 inches, that's measured from the end of the stall to the point where you can turn around and start moving forward. So in other words, if you've got a parking stall of sufficient depth, you'll be 12 feet out into the road before you can bring it back forward. As you go to vehicles with longer bodies and different geometries as far as turning radiuses and that sort of thing goes, you notice that the vehicle that we tested that had the single greatest maneuvering space requirements is a vehicle like a Ford F-250, and it takes about 20 feet of space to be able to back out to the point where you can pull forward. And like I said, the only instruction we gave to the people that participated in our test was back out to the point where you are at the point where you can just start to pull forward. Don't take it all the way back. Just go the minimum distance back. And so that's how we developed this particular maneuvering table. So in this particular case, chances are that a vehicle backing out, from one of these spaces into Western Avenue, will have to be cognizant of vehicles traveling in both directions on Western because something like a Ford F-250 is going to cross the center line. So it'll be a challenge. In this particular area, we've still got a posted speed limit of 30 on Western. I think starting around 47th Street, I think, is where the speed limit drops to 25. But in this particular area, it's still 30 miles an hour. And I think we got a reasonable traffic volume on this particular section of Western Avenue. I believe we were up in the neighborhood about 14,000. 12,462 vehicles per day. But
Well, my question is, can we increase that distance? Because that's very minimum that you're citing, right? To be able
Yes.
to back out. Mm-hmm. And most people, I drive a pickup, and I find it hard some places to back out of some of these parking places without encroaching the center line. I have to be very careful, but I'm just curious. I'm also concerned about that because with the speed limit and the volume of traffic over there, people can really interfere with traffic flow, and what's the road user going to do? He's going to have to stop and let somebody out every time to let him out to get into traffic. We all know that, but without worrying about the opposite traffic, and I'm just afraid that it's awful close to center line encroachment.
How much space is needed to avoid that situation? Because I share that concern. So let's use the truck example. How much more distance would be needed so when it is fully backing out to become forward maneuverable, it's not crossing center line? And where would that space come from?
Well, part of that is driven by the width of the lanes behind the space, too. Currently Western Avenue in this area is 30 feet wide. The driving width is 30 feet in this block right now. Currently we have 15-foot wide lanes on each side. In this particular application, they're showing narrowing the southbound lane from 15 to about 11 feet. So, you do take away some of the maneuvering space behind it. But there's, by the same token, in the areas to the south of this, in the area where the city had done some streetscape work on Western, I believe some of these are probably fairly tight maneuvering quarters. Again, there's spaces there that are probably of minimal depth. Plus, they've got some buffer behind them, but it's just tight through Western Avenue in this particular area.
Stuart, I have a question. I see that the opposite travel lane is dimensioned at 14.12 feet on one end and 13.11 on the other end. Is there anything that is setting that center line? I know the 14 seems pretty ample for a driving lane. The 13 is getting a little narrow, but is there any way the center line could shift a little bit further to maybe get another foot or two.
You're talking about further to the east? Well, when you get into a situation like that, then what you're kind of instructing drivers to do is they'll be making slight lane shifts as they go from block to block. And under ordinary driving conditions, if you've got like a dry road surface and you've got adequate lighting or whatever, you might be able to see pavement markings and everything to guide you through. But, you get in nighttime conditions or wet pavement conditions where you're not seeing the markings quite as clearly. This is really all driven by how well you can see the pavement markings. And most drivers aren't, may or may not, if you're looking for people backing out or something like that, you may or may not be, there's a lot to watch on the road. And you may not be following some of these lane shifts as carefully as you ought to. But, like I said, in this particular area, we've got posted limits of 25 and 30 miles an hour. So it's not like we're asking drivers to be cognizant of a backing maneuver on something where we've got a limit like 35 or 40 miles an hour.
Isn't this also consistent with the streetscape design on down the street from
These
40th to 44th?
are the same dimensions that's south of this project that were recently built, and you can see out there the same dimensions from the center line to the front of the parked cars. This was iterations have gone through to get to this point to match what is just south of there. This development and the representative of the developer is here, and that development is going to be is planned to be a mixed use with residential retail similar to what's south of here as well.
So there's a replica of this just down the street.
Yes, ma'am.
Same 60-degree angle, same width.
Yeah, well, in the area to the south, there is a little bit of 60-degree, but it's predominantly 45. And the maneuvering space required behind a 45-degree angle parking space is less depth-wise than something at 60. Because, the maximum you're going to get as far as maneuvering room goes behind the space is when you're looking at like a 90-degree, basically a head-in angle a 90-degree angle parking space where you're perpendicular to the curb.
So it's not exactly a replica of this. It's more 45s.
There are 60s that we've matched the 60-degree angle space.
Right. But like I said, there are a few 60-degree spaces in there, but predominantly to the south on Western, it's all 40. It's mostly 45.
Okay, I still have my question. Is there any reason why we can't increase that lane width to 13 to match? I mean, what's to keep it from moving back a little? I don't see anything in the way of construction that would cause that.
We could change the center line and slide it, extend it past 49th and 48th and taper it, so it's a gradual taper to give a little more room for that if that's something that you would like us to change.
Well, if I might ask a question for clarification, I believe that Commissioner Miller is asking, is there any reason why the parking spaces
In the area where you're
proposed,
asking for the parking.
the parking spaces themselves can be physically shifted further to the west away from the roadway?
Oh, I see. The development, the right-of-way line and the development with the patio seating and just similar to what's down south is kind of the anticipated configuration of this. And so we thought since we were matching what was south of there, we could do the same thing and have the same patio seating that is similar to what's just south of there. We're trying to make this a walkable, pedestrian-friendly corridor, and so that was one of the reasons we were just trying to replicate what's just further south. A 45-degree angle change in parking stalls may be something that we can look at. I don't know how many parking spots that takes. Obviously, we're trying to get as many parking spots there accessible, but we also have some parking spots in the back as well.
So what you're saying is you don't want to move the actual curb because you want to leave as much sidewalk space for the patio as you can.
Yes, sir.
And then by going to a 45-degree angle compared to a 60, that will help on the back out space distance as he's talking about, but you don't know the impact. It may lose one space, maybe two. We don't
Yeah,
know.
I haven't laid that out to see how many spots we'd lose on that configuration.
Right. And if you're wondering what that does width-wise along the roadway, on page 3 of the report, we've got the table that indicates the perpendicular depth of the spaces for for angle spaces from 45, 60, and 75 degree spaces. And you'll see that in column C, which is a perpendicular depth of spaces at the at 45 degree angles, you're looking at a parking space depth that is 1 foot less than that required for a 75 for a 60 degree space. So, yeah, there's a possibility to buy back room by going to a different angle.
Does it buy enough room to prevent me from backing into the oncoming traffic when I back out in my truck? Do we know the answer?
Well,
to that?
considering we don't have a proposal from the applicant to that effect, I don't have anything in front of me that would tell you one way or the other. It would improve condition.
Okay.
Still not established.
Any other talk on this item? Yes, sir.
Would it be more acceptable if we had a 45-degree angle instead of the 60?
Well, obviously, that increases the maneuver space backing out. I'm still concerned, I don't want to reduce the lane width on Western. I can't see patio tables taking the place of the road users on Western. I just can't see that. So if we could compromise and get that back over, I'm not opposed to angle parking, but certainly don't want anybody to have it back across the center line. That's just ridiculous on that street. So we can, I mean, if you have changing angle, that's fine, but I can't go with what's proposed.
Do you need the time to review what impact that would have on your plans?
Okay. We can review that. Ryan Smith.
Hi, I'm Ryan Smith, 30 Northeast 2nd Street. I am the representative in charge for the project through the architecture firm and operate here under the guidance of my client and developer also. And a couple of things that I want to reiterate about this project. There has been parking provided for in the back behind this project, and there are at least 40 spaces. And I happen to drive a truck also, so I share all of your concerns. And I think that a lot of the effort on Western is to make Western more pedestrian friendly. And that's where the improvements are coming from, to widen the sidewalks, to shorten the lanes, or to narrow the lanes, and to also reduce the speeds along Western. And there is 60-degree parking that's working successfully right now on Western. So we are just trying to duplicate that. I think as a guy that drives a truck, I have to make a decision. And often, it doesn't fit everywhere, especially in angle parking off of a narrow street. And so I have the option to look for other spots. And in this particular project, there is ample parking in the back that fits those vehicles, that is perpendicular to the drive aisles. So to say that it's a dangerous situation, I think that that's completely at the judgment of the driver, because it's not something that we're trying to reinvent. It's something that's already existing that we're duplicating. I think that it would be a good idea, and I don't have a problem taking the time to study a steeper angle of parking to see what that does to decrease or to improve the lane measurement. It will decrease the parking, which is another consideration that we have to fulfill because we have a required number of spots. So we're trying to find a balance there. To take it out of the sidewalk is possible, but it doesn't lend a lot towards improving Western to be more walkable. And I also would just suggest that we don't start designing the world around the F-250s. Being a guy that drives one, you just wind up with a lot less space. And for what's going on in Western, it is a tight neighborhood. It is a quaint place to be, and it is a fun place to walk around and not have to relocate your car multiple times. So those are some of the things that I wanted to say. I don't have a problem continuing this and allowing us time to look into it further, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew where my client was coming from.
Okay, hold on one second, sir. Did you start off with your name and your address?
Sure, it's Ryan Smith,
and
30 Northeast 2nd Street.
Okay, and could you fill out one of the forms when we're done, please?
Sure.
All right, thank you. All right, just some housekeeping. Okay, so options on the table is we go with the motion as planned. Another option could be that you pull your motion, and the applicant would ask for it to be pushed to next meeting, so they could consider more data. So those are the options that we have on the table here. It's up to
I'll
you, sir.
pull my motion if you agree to look at it, come back with some. Okay.
So you're fine with that if we were to pull this motion and go back to you and you ask us to hold it till next meeting to bring in some more data about 45 and other options that are out there? Okay? Okay. So you would change the motion to continue?
I do.
Okay. So we have Commissioner Miller changed his motion from disapproval to continue, and Commissioner Hale is the second. Do you?
Second his new motion.
Okay. Do we have any talk on this item? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to be clear that any recommendation that forces someone to back out into a potentially unsafe situation, even though it could be interpreted as planning the world around the Ford F-250, which I don't think it is, it's just, it's creating a mindset that we're considering all the users. And if there's a space available, it means I and whether my vehicle is long or not, someone much more than I considered, they've given me safe distance to pull in and safely pull out. Anything shy of that feels like we're not doing our job. So I just want, I love the idea that you're willing to reconsider the angles. I just think, and I will probably stay pretty firm on the idea, we need to make sure we're not forcing people into oncoming, unplanned, not used to looking for that direction of traffic when I'm backing out. I feel strongly that that's not a suitable solution here. So I just want to be real clear on that.
I've got one comment too then, I guess. On this month off, maybe the city or maybe you guys can take a look at the other 60-degree parking that's down the street and pull some measurements on those. And if they, I would hate for us to start setting up double standard where one person gets disapproved and this person doesn't. So, I think if you're meeting or exceeding what we've previously approved, and I know Western needs more parking, that whole area. So 60-degree parking will probably give you 4 or 5 more spaces, I would assume. And I think that's helpful for that area. But, that's my sense on it. And I think we need to make sure that we're being fair with everybody that comes here. So.
Thank you very much. We will make sure to take care of that and come back with those dimensions. I'd also like to ask, since Secretary Chai is the gentleman that we will probably work through these before we bring it back to the commission with, that he take a consensus of the commissioners on what would be acceptable for that dimension. Because I think some of the information on what's immediately approvable if you maintain and what happens in real life are two different things. And more than anything, we don't want to create an unsafe condition either. I started out by saying I share all of those feelings with you. And it would be helpful to know what would be approvable, I guess, to wrap that up.
Okay. Well, I think that the basic, whatever's previously done that's working, if it's staying in the same standard, would probably, as was just said, would probably flow in the same way. You start taking a foot or two away, then it might be a problem, just in a general talk. Right.
It is designed now in exact replication of what is existing and what has been approved. So let me be very clear about that.
Sure.
I would be happy to look into how to improve it even more by steepening the angle.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So any more talk on item 5B? We have a motion from Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Hale, to continue item B till next meeting. Okay, can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is pushed.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your time. Okay, we go on now to item 5C, BJ Hawkins, PE, PTOE, Traffic Engineering Consultants, Inc., to consider requests for the installation of a traffic signal on South Council Road at its south intersection with a private street, Southwest 2nd Terrace, located approximately 460 feet south of West Reno Avenue. Staff?
Okay, the applicant has contacted us and requested that this item be continued to the next meeting.
Okay. Do we have a motion concerning item 5C?
Will it be continued to the next meeting?
We have a motion from Commissioner Schuline to continue item 5C. We have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to continue item 5C from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved to be continued. 5D, Chris Brewster, Superintendent, Santa Fe South Schools, Inc., to consider requests from Santa Fe Schools, South Schools, Inc., to establish a school zone with flashing warning signals on South Shields Boulevard from the south curb line of Southeast 45th Street to the north curb line of Southeast 48th Street for Santa Fe South Schools 6th Grade Learning Center located at 4701 South Shields Boulevard. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, can we have staff input, please?
Okay, you've got all our comments before you. In the recommendation section on page 3 of the report, we note, because when we evaluated this particular matter, we went out and conducted a school day observation to gauge the level of pedestrian activity. At this particular location, there were no pedestrians that crossed Shields Boulevard in the immediate vicinity of where the school zone is being requested. There's not a crossing guard that works. It appears that the students that arrive at this particular school, which is a charter school, are all basically brought in by private vehicle. So in the absence of any pedestrian activity, we just don't have cause to recommend the approval of a school zone to slow traffic in the vicinity of this particular school. You know, one of the things that we note when we study, or that we note in the reports, is that the appropriate use of a school zone on an arterial is to reduce traffic speeds in areas where school-age pedestrians, which are the most inexperienced and vulnerable group of all roadway users, where they're likely to cross the street on their way to and from school. And it's particularly important if you've got a crossing guard that's working, something like this, because their ability to interrupt a slower moving stream of traffic is it's safer for everyone if they can do that. But in this particular case, where there is no pedestrian activity, there's really not cause to have a school zone in place.
We have a motion concerning item 5D.
Motion to disapprove.
We have a motion to disapprove 5D from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner George. Any discussions?
That's my only question is, when you were out looking for kids, it wasn't during the summer, right? During school year?
No, we've got the date on there. We were out on January 27th. Actually, the weather was fairly nice that particular day.
Okay, any more talk on item 5D? We have a motion to disapprove item 5D from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. We're going now to item 5E. Chris Brewster, Superintendent, Santa Fe South Schools, Inc., to consider a request from Santa Fe South Schools, Inc. to establish a school zone with flashing warning lights on Southwest 44th Street from approximately 400 feet to the west of South Youngs Boulevard to approximately 300 feet to the east of South Barnes Avenue for Santa Fe South Schools Early Childhood Center located at 2222 Southwest 44th Street. Everybody here to speak on item 5E? We have staff input, please.
Okay, you've got all our comments before you. We'll just note that, like the previous application, we were out and we were observing traffic conditions and pedestrian activity. The one thing to note about this particular school is it's set up to serve pre-K through first grade, and there were no, and all these students are of such an age that they're all pretty much brought in by vehicle. Again, Santa Fe South Schools is a charter school, and it's not a neighborhood school, so there were no school-age pedestrians at the time the school let out. So for that reason, we have no reason to recommend the use of a school zone on Southwest 44th Street in the absence of any pedestrian activity.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
Motion to disapprove.
We have a motion to disapprove item 5E from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion on item 5E? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5E from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Votes, please. Okay, item is disapproved. We go on to 5F, Timothy W. Johnson, P.E., President, Johnson & Associates, Inc., to consider request to, 1, establish 90-degree angle parking within a proposed on-street parking area on the west side of North McKinley Avenue from approximately 43 feet south to 131 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 16th Street, and 2, establish 1 reserved parking space for the physically disabled on the west side of North McKinley Avenue from approximately 43 feet south to 59 feet south of the south curb line of Northwest 16th Street, adjacent to 1600 Northwest 16th Street. You have anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Can I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes?
Timothy W. Johnson, Johnson & Associates here on behalf of the applicant, 1 East Sheridan Avenue, Suite 200. Thank you for hearing this case today. This is a project that's under construction that has residential over retail, a very small piece of retail along 16th Street and McKinley. I'm sorry, just on 16th Street. It's all residential on McKinley. We've asked for this 90-degree parking because we do have a lot of traffic going north and south on McKinley. So if we did the angle parking, we'd be creating situations, people wanting to go make a U-turn in the middle of the street. This is different than the previous application you looked at in that everything's posted 25. It's an established, the Plaza District's an established pedestrian-friendly area with a lot of on-street parking further west of this site. And McKinley in this case is 30 feet wide as opposed to the normal 26-foot wide residential street, so it gives us a little more cushion than you normally have in a residential street. We've made the same application in 2 other streets in Oklahoma City, and it's been very successful in residential areas. So we're not dealing with high-speed traffic and the concerns that you had before. But this will serve the retail only. The residential parking is behind the building, and there are enough spaces to serve the entire project, the residential portion. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. We have staff input.
As Mr. Johnson mentioned, the field conditions are different at this particular location than they were for the ones you had considered for the Western Avenue case. You've got a traffic volume of about 1,282 vehicles per day on McKinley, so it is not a high-traffic affair. It is built to a collector section, and it is this particular roadway. If you look at the east side of the road where there's residential driveways, the predominant parking maneuvers on this road already are either parallel parking or they're basically backing out of driveways where they're basically replicating backing out from a 90-degree angle. Like I said, the spaces were built and they're designed in a similar manner to that which the commission approved over off of Northwest 67th and 68th Streets. In this particular case, what we would recommend, or we're recommending action on the item is going to be at the discretion of the commission, but if recommended for approval, the motion should include the following conditions, which is sidewalks conforming to the Public Works Department's current design standards must be constructed in accordance with Part D of Section 32303 at all locations where angle parking is approved, and the parking spaces approved and the required adjacent sidewalks must be built either within public right-of-way or within an easement. Happy to answer any questions that you may have on the application.
Okay, do we have a motion concerning item 5F?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the applicant's request with a provision included by staff that sidewalks be conforming to the Public Works Department's current design requirements must be constructed in accordance with Part D of Section 32-303D at all locations where angle parking is approved, and that all parking spaces approved in the required adjacent sidewalk, as required in Part D, must be built either within the public right-of-way or an easement.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline with the staff recommendations. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner George. Any discussion? The only thing I have is, are you okay with the staff recommendations, sir? All right, thank you. Okay, very good. Okay, any further discussion on 5F? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5F from Commissioner Schuline with the staff recommendations, seconded by Commissioner George. Now we votes, please. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, item is approved. We go on now to item 5G. Stacy Trumbo, PE, County Engineer, Oklahoma City, and Traffic Management Division to consider, 1, remove 1 hour metered parking on the west side of North Harvey Avenue from Park Avenue to approximately 160 feet north of the north curb line of Park Avenue, and 2, establish a full-time reserve parking for the government business zone on the west side of North Harvey Avenue from Park Avenue to approximately 160 feet north of the north curb line of Park Avenue. Anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, sir, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, Stacy Trumbo, 320 Robert S. Kerr. Thank the Commission for hearing this today. It is on Harvey, adjacent to the courthouse. We'd ask for some government parking to be restored like it was before the Project 180. It's more specifically for law enforcement that's under district court subpoena. And I think we were here before and you wanted more information about how it used to be. So we brought it back for you today. I have Lieutenant with me if you've got any real detailed questions.
LT, did you want to come up and talk? If I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your consideration of our proposal. What we would like to see on the east side of the courthouse, west parking lane, from Park North at least to the alleyway, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, reserved for law enforcement only. And the reason behind that is the officers that are subpoenaed by the district courts for trial have, especially at this point with the 180 project, absolutely no place to park. I've talked to my particular commander at the courthouse, and we feel it's unsafe to put marked units in the garage with weapons locked up or not. So what we're asking for is that small area, which would consist southbound of the alleyway, west curb to Park, and it would allow us about 7 spots. And that's going to cover probably all the multiple county units and law enforcement entities throughout the county here, which I'm sure they're more than that, but we generally get 5 to 7 subpoenas for every trial week or prelims during the week. And so that's basically what we're asking for.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Staff input.
All right. This item was continued from the May 16th agenda at the request of the Municipal Counselor's Office. The continuance was asked so that information about parking controls in place at this location prior to the passage of the metered parking ordinance 24480 could be researched. This information appears on the 4th and 5th paragraphs of the 2nd page of the staff report. And in particular, prior to the start of Project 180, there was matter of fact, the entire west side of the street was signed for the use of, it was marked, the signs in place were marked reserve parking law enforcement officers. And that's shown on the following page of the staff report. In the past, it had occupied the entire west side of the street. In this particular case, they're asking for a lesser portion of the roadway to set aside. Staff had written this up such that the zone would be in effect on a full-time basis. And the reason for that is there are times when court businesses run long, and considering the fact that they're paring back the amount of curb space that's being set aside for this particular use. 8 to 5 Monday through Friday is fine if you want to go with a reduced version of it. But since it is immediately adjacent to the courthouse, that's a reason why we'd recommended it. It's just one of those things that if you keep people from learning to park there, or just dissuading that particular, or just preventing people from parking in that area on a regular basis, it would probably better serve court operations. So it is for that reason that we'd recommended approval of the item as it was submitted, with the metered parking being removed and establishing a full-time reserved for government business zone on the west side of Harvey from basically Park Avenue to the south side of the alley. So if you've got any questions on this particular item, I'm happy to answer your questions.
You have a motion for item 5G.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt or approve the applicant's request with the provision that it be on a full-time basis.
Which is in the motion. Right. So we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Commissioner Miller. Any talk on this item? Any major concern going full-time compared to what you wanted? You're okay with the full-time, LT?
Basically, what we're asking for, sir, because the apartment's just east, on the east side of Harvey, we understand after hours, holidays, weekends, they're going to need to use that parking. So what we're basically asking for is just 8 to 5. That would accommodate the courts.
If that's...
I was about to say that it can always be amended so that it's, you can remove the full-time restriction, which would make it just it would be, basically, it would be, the way the codes are written, it's Mondays through Saturdays, and Sundays never, parking restriction unless signed as being in effect on a full-time basis, Sundays are never enforced, and weekends and holidays, it wouldn't be subject to being enforced, and Saturday is defined as a holiday. So right now, it would just be Monday through Friday, 8 to 6, if you did not approve it on a full-time basis. So if Oklahoma County doesn't have any issues with that, and they wanted to have it on a, allow it to be parked on at other times, it's up to the commission. It'd be just fine. Yeah. Well, they can always vote on something less to make it less restrictive.
Well, haven't they asked for Monday through Friday, 8 to 5? I mean, that was their request, wasn't it?
The item that's up for us is full-time. Now, we'll have to, and that's what came to us. And talking to council, we would have to disapprove this item, and it would have to come back. We wouldn't be able to modify.
I would just recommend continuing it, since the agenda says full-time, and that was what was up for consideration. To consider less than that, I would recommend continuing it and bringing it back next month.
Gosh, we've already continued it once. Let's
Would it be okay if we waited another month? Is it an urgent issue?
I think it just ends up being an issue of enforcement. That's why the staff recommended what they did. And the more I think about it, if you let the apartment people park there Sunday night, they'll still be there Monday morning. And there'll be no place for the officers to park under subpoena. So I think the staff properly recommended the full-time for a good reason.
Okay, so you're okay with the full-time?
Yeah, let's leave the full-time just as the motion, as the staff recommendation in the motion was. Otherwise, you will have an enforcement problem.
Okay.
People using it at night, not being out of there by 8 in the morning.
Okay.
We need the full-time.
All right. Any other talk on item 5G? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5G from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Every votes, please. Okay, item is approved. Okay, we go on to item 5H, Jonathan Hustle, PE, President, Project Manager, Path Engineering, Design and Urbanism, PLLC, to consider a request to establish a reserved parking space for the physically disabled within the proposed insert parking area on the south side of Northwest 1st Street from approximately 45 feet west to 75 feet west of the west curb line of North Clausen Boulevard. Sir, did you want to talk? If I have your name, your address, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Jonathan Heisel, 215 South Walker. On behalf of the client, I just wanted to say this is an ADA spot added to a great project. It's going to be exciting to all the mixed use. They've got a brewery plan, some office space. It's going to really bring this street back to life and be hopefully a catalyst for more development in this area. Appreciate your consideration of this item.
Thank you. Can we have staff input?
All right. Considering the reserved parking space for the disabled on First Street is at a location that's set far enough back from Clausen Boulevard to maintain safe roadway conditions for the operation of the intersection, staff would recommend approval of this particular application as it's presented.
Do we have a motion concerning item 5H?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the application.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on item 5H?
I have a
Yes, sir.
question. Where's the accessible aisle? The ADA accessible aisle?
There's an ADA ramp right in front of the spot, and then the entire sidewalk will be ADA accessible all the way down the east side of the building, and then along the front to the parking areas, the other parking areas that are west of the building. That picture.
I'm looking at the site plan, and I see the sign space and the accessible ramp, but I don't see an accessible handicap aisle, the 5 foot.
The 5 foot outside of that, because visiting with Keith Wilkinson, because of this location and its vicinity to it, the ADA ramp is actually not required, but we put it in anyway. He said once folks exit, because of the distance to the building that the curb line is, that folks can drop directly onto the sidewalk. It's allowable to use that rather than, since we've got this limitation adjacent to the building. It's less than 14 feet, I think, is the number. Being less than 14 feet, then they can drop the ramp directly onto the top of the curb and enter into the sidewalk that way.
On the side, it is a standard curb and gutter, correct?
Yes, sir.
I don't see how the 5 foot accessible aisle. I know it's not a required, it's a supplementary space, but if you're going to create an accessible space, I think it ought to meet guidelines.
According to Keith, I understood it did meet the guidelines.
Yeah, I was about to say, in this particular case, and for those commissioners that were able to meet in a sub-quorum group prior to the meeting to go over some of the agenda items, one thing that I had brought up and discussed with them is the fact that probably for the next meeting we're working towards bringing forth a standards for angle parking, for on-street angle parking, and we'll also include design standards for accessible parking spaces. Now, the one issue about accessible aisles and things along that line, there are a lot of federal guidelines, but there's not a lot of federal law that prescribes exactly how accessible spaces are to be constructed. And since the city doesn't really have any on-street parking standards, we're going to take the opportunity that once we develop standards for, angle parking of various angles, we're also going to throw in standards for accessible parking spaces as well. And some of that and those standards will be driven by the fact, by looking at things like how much right-of-way there is adjacent to the space as far as walks, widths, and stuff like that, because there's an awful lot of information that's in the that's in the ADA and PROAG regarding design criteria for accessible spaces, but there's not a lot of law at this point in time. So for the sake of future developers and for designers within the city, it's probably best that if you're going to propose on-street angle parking, you ought to have a standard detail that's one of the city's adopted standards that they can incorporate into their designs. It would make it much simpler for everyone involved. But like I said, at this point in time, I couldn't tell you one way or the other if there is an absolute requirement for the aisle. I know if there was like two back-to-back parallel parking spaces, there would need to be a 5-foot accessible aisle in between the spaces. But in this particular case, I'm not aware of a standard like this. And, in the Project 180 parking spaces that have been built throughout the downtown area, I know in certain areas they've got additional depth constructed next to the parking space, but I think that was more or less a city decision to build them in that manner. So, to say that I'm an expert on the layout for ADA parking spaces, it is a subject that changes with relative frequency that's hard to stay on top of it. I don't know if I answered your question, though.
Well, to me, with the curb and gutter on the would be the south side, that to me leads to the accessible side. The passengers or the occupants of the vehicle exiting out on the street side, and they need a 5-foot aisle, and we're essentially putting them in traffic.
Would this be a design change you'd be willing to entertain? Adjusting the curb line to provide for like an accessible path that would be along the passenger side of the vehicle.
Do additional bump out there?
Well, if you look at a lot of the spaces downtown, like Stuart was saying, there's additional depth provided. So do you have the opportunity to create that 5-foot access aisle along the curb line?
Because of the elevations of where the sidewalk is and where our gutter line is and drainage issues, don't feel like we don't have the depth from the building and it's a vertical challenge to accommodate that. That's why it was worked out with Keith and he brought it up to me that we could lay that on top of the curb, that accessible ramp off of the van accessible spot off the curb. And we also have an ADA spot internally as well that is totally van accessible, and that's all there's no curbs in there, and so we did include a van accessible space inside the property as well. So there's really 2 ADA spots, and you could consider both of them van accessible spots.
Right, and the reason why a space is being provided on street is because whenever parking is being modified or added to public city streets, since public parking is considered a city program or a government program, then the requirements of accessibility come into play. And so the city wouldn't just create like a block or authorize the creation of a block of parking, on-street parking, without making sure that there's at least the correct ratio between the number of non-accessible spots and accessible spots. I mean, the ADA provides guidelines that, I believe it's like for one every 25 spaces you have to have at least one that's accessible. And when it comes to parking on street, the city follows that same formula. So in this particular case, since a few spaces were being created, it was, we've directed this applicant to set aside at least one for use by the disabled.
Okay, all right. Any other talk on item 5H? We have a motion to approve item 5H from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Thank you. We go on now to item 6, comments from citizens. Anybody out there want to talk? No? Okay, very good. We go on now to item 7, reports from other traffic commissioners, et cetera. Let's go ahead and go to Commissioner Clare. Do you have anything for us, sir?
No.
Okay, thank you. Go to Commissioner Hale.
And nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Hey, thank you for the new speed limit signs on 23rd, and I noticed that has a new identified as new, so it kind of warns vehicle traffic. I think it's a good thing. Thank you very much.
Okay, go to Commissioner Miller.
Yeah. How's those 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign working for you?
Our after study for this, as far as observance of the speed limits on 23rd Street goes, essentially the speed breakdown mirrors what was there prior to the signs going up, and prior to this it was posted at 30. As far as the 85th percentile and the other running speeds go, they're pretty much unchanged at this point.
I'll just say I drove down there. I used to drive down there a few times, but now with the new speed limit, I drove through there, saw the signs, and I felt very comfortable at 25, and that was about 9:30 in the morning. Traffic was flowing. I don't think a car blew by me, but somebody might have gone 28, 30 past me. But I felt 25 was very good as far as how tight it's getting. Never mind once all that opens up. Okay, anything out there, Commissioner Miller? Commissioner George? Commissioner Yonkel? Okay, I got one housekeeping. We're going to put on a meeting agenda next month. We need a vice chairman. So think about if you'd like to be the vice chair. It'll be till October meeting where we do our normal vote for chairman and vice chairman to take over in November. So if you'd like to be considered for that, please let us know. Anything from council? Anything from staff?
Okay, you've got our standard report on yield signs and some parking restrictions that we've done administratively. Planning department staff has been in contact with me, and they're in the preliminary stages right now of fleshing together an agenda. It would be a joint workshop of the Planning Commission and the Traffic and Transportation Commission, and the intention is to be able to discuss traffic-related issues as they relate to existing current development, new development, some of the policy goals that are contained in the city's new comprehensive plan, which is called Plan OKC. They're very interested, members of the Planning Commission are very interested in hearing from members of the Commission regarding this Commission's traffic calming subcommittee. So at this point in time, I just have a preliminary agenda. It looks like they're targeting a meeting date for Thursday, October 13th at this point in time. There's not been a meeting time set, but when they passed this to me last week, I told them that I would bring this to your attention, and so you can start looking at your calendars and seeing if you may be able to make that date. So,
or just ask the subcommittee representatives to maybe go to that meeting for us. And it's getting close that we should be getting something from the city, from the staff, from the subcommittee to us.
Right. Yeah, well, and
we're almost there.
Well, the issue of regulating human behavior, on public city streets is challenging at its very best, and sometimes people's driving practices are influenced by the design of the area, their perception of it, whether a street should be driven at a higher speed or a lower speed, whatever they're most comfortable with, and so there are things that can be done with an eye towards future development, not building things that are going to be perceived as a higher speed roadway through a neighborhood. So there's an awful lot of discussion yet to take place on this particular matter, but I think it'll be a good opportunity to exchange ideas.
Right, and I think on our side, from our subcommittee, we're very clear, and I'm going to put words in your mouth here. I think we're very clear on our request to the Planning Commission to consider these factors when they approve plats to be zoned out there and roads to be built, to consider these things so we don't have to fix it years later. The hardest, so that's one piece, and I think that's a simple representation from the Traffic Commission to the Planning Commission with those thoughts. The subcommittee's hard work, the 99.9% of the work from the subcommittee is what do we do with these old established roads that turn from normal neighborhood roads, because now there's 3 housing units or areas built past that now turn into a feeder road that were built for just a normal, and how do we control that? in something that's already established, a nice mile-long, straight, pretty wide open road that now has a lot of traffic, not just local traffic. I think that's where the subcommittee's earning its money. So yeah, I think for that's a pretty simple pass along of how we feel as the Traffic Commission, and we would probably send our subcommittee people. Okay, very good. Okay, any other business for the Traffic Commission? Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn, please? We have a motion from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Can I have all your votes, please? Okay, and we're adjourned. Thank you all.